Wait a few seconds and then. Uh, all right.
Hang on.
Well, I'll introduce you and you can take your time a little bit on that, Ed. All right, everybody, you are listening to Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Today is April 28th, 2018. Uh, just for information purposes, we are not lawyers, we are not attorneys, we are not any professional, licensed anything. We're just men and women, living men and women, who have learned how much of a fraud that we have been uh, swindled by, and we are trying to get the truth out. That is one of the reasons why we are being blocked so often, and so many shows have been showing up on the days that our shows are, and at the times. So, if you want the truth, look for the underdog. Do not look at the Mr. I am really big and powerful. I'm Alex Jones and I drink whale. None of that crap. All right. Look for the underdog. Look for those who actually make sense, and look for those who have proof. You can claim anything you want, but without proof, it is nothing but hearsay. Hearsay is basically gossip. You want proof? Look at what has been filed, what has gone through, what cases have been won, or what cases have been thrown out because of whatever the living man or woman has done. Do not interpret laws. Deal with laws on their own. Do not interpret them. Now, statute codes, ministerial rules, that's basically the bully saying, you can't do this because I'm bigger than you. That's about it. So, with that, Ed, why don't you take it away?
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us again this evening. We all about learning, reading, and educating ourselves. I've had a couple people here recently ask me, well, Ed, how do you know all this stuff? I sit and read it, folks. See, I never went to college. Well, I did. I went to college for a few semesters. I went into college because I was going into law enforcement. And then all of a sudden, when I realized what college and the police department was really all about compared to the fantasy I thought it was. Let me tell you, the fantasy I thought it was. Been there, done it. When I realized the police department was a joke or fantasy or whatever you want to call it, and corporation severity compared to the way we are allegedly taught to believe of it, is when I was a rent-a-cop, and then I ended up with my own security company, and I realized the cops are no more than a rent-a-cop. That's it. No ifs, ands, or buts. They don't have any force of contract as what people think they do. They have a contract with a corporation, and they are nothing more than debt collectors. And, cops will tell you, oh, no, we're not. They lie, because the Supreme Court says they can. So we're going through this point even with medical personnel. Because in the state of Oregon, and this is what I just did, so everybody, and if you want a copy of what I sent out to the so-called medical society, because this last week I was informed that because I don't have Oregon State Corporation ID, I can't have medical services. And I just went off on a tip of that one. Went, what the hell? We got all these domestic and foreign terrorists in our state, in our country, getting free medical. They don't have to sit there and produce anything. I got enough evidence that's out there in public hearings and videos where, you can't just deny who I am. I'm on many public hearings, YouTube videos have been written in the paper hundreds of times, literally. And, first stirring up the pot is somebody will say, but to me it's not stirring up the pot, it's bringing facts out. Even when I put Bernice Burnett, the former district attorney of Lincoln County, on public trial in the media. And that was written in 2 medias, including the Oregonian even wrote about what I did to Bernice. So, I mean, these men and women do know who, the circumstances of what I am. They know I comprehend the system just as much as they do. The last week, I was informed by a newspaper corporation this last week. Sent them some information because, everybody knows what I'm dealing with. I haven't got a response dealing with, what is that called? When I filed on Linda Pilson, a local tax collector, because I also, too, in that instrument, I even asked her that she take an oath to the corporation of the United States of We the People, or to certify a copy that she took to the corporation of rape, robbing, and pillaging and murdering, called the Vatican, and so the Christianity Church. And that's the way it's filed through the state that way, so I've got the registration and their structure on that, so it is getting this information out correctly, and that is the one thing. And by the way, Dave said hi. I talked to Dave earlier. He is getting ready to move to Florida. The stroke really had a deal on him, so he's decided he's going to Florida. So, well, best of luck to you. Hopefully Dave's out there. I don't know if he called in or not. He said he called in a time or two ago and he couldn't get through, which sort of stuns me because we all know his number, so that's why I'm just sort of stunned with that one. But anyhow, so Dave is off on his little excursion to go to Florida and go live in the sunny weather circumstances of Florida. No, I guess Florida for me could be a little too hot. I'm used to the coastline and the cool weather. But anyhow, I want to get back to what's going on with the medical structure, and this is what I had another direction I was going to go tonight. But then after what I went through with the doctor telling me, doctor's servant telling me, his employee, the first one I set up my appointment, and the next guy is telling me, well, if you don't have state ID, I'm canceling your appointment. I said, no, you can't cancel my appointment. I already got a contract with you, verbal, I accept it. Well, and I emailed him to confirm the contract, too. So, because I've been dealing with severe chronic pain patient as I am. Right now, I'm in so much pain, it's just, unless you've had extreme pain, you wouldn't have a concept or have accomplished no knowledge of what chronic pain was. And that means it's just not like where you get an ache and it's just there for a while. We're talking chronic pain for sometimes days on end, where, the pain gets so bad, it's frustrating. So, but, the guy makes an appointment with me, and he's trying to tell me, well, because I don't have corporate ID, I can't be seen. I asked him on the phone, well, what law is that? He goes, it doesn't matter what law it is. It's what I say. Yeah, no, it's not what you say. That's the point. So the letter I sent out today went to the medical board as well, because I wanted to make sure the medical board didn't feel left out. I wanted to make sure that the Workman's Comp Advisory Committee didn't want to feel them missed out, didn't want the insurance board to feel missed out, so I emailed them all to all the other ones involved. Oh, that's right, I'm involved in some of the committees personally myself. I've been on them for 10 years. And that's the one thing I have been blessed. I'm still on the advisory board of a couple of the Workman's Comp Division structures here in Oregon, but the one thing is I try to explain to people when it comes to these corporation structures. Remember, these men and women work for you, me, and that's where we have to remind them. So I sent a very interesting instrument this morning to the doctor, including where the hospital's liable. They're going, well, they don't turn medication away or anything for illegals or foreign terrorists, domestic terrorists. So it's really disturbing when these people come to our country and they get treated a hell of a lot better than we get treated. And we're the ones that are supposed to be treated like royalty here, because we the lawful Americans, male, female, are equal. There is no, set of, and we go by king or queen, so we're all kings, we're all queens. We're equal on the land here. We're not in a monarchy where, some people have other rights than somebody else. It doesn't work in reality here. We don't do that in this country. It's not feasible. So that's the one thing that people have got to start coming to the conclusion on this circumstances of comprehending what the truth is. So when the doctors are sitting there telling you this, and then when I got a hold of the medical board, I thought it was interesting because I've dealt with the medical board too, dealing with my past and the connections I've done and what I've worked with in the past. And all of a sudden they're telling me, well, now the medical board has no say in anything that goes on with the medical personnel because the medical personnel, which we know, is like attorneys. They're a club. They have their own membership club, and it's like attorneys. They get accepted by their own club because the medical board technically has no authority over the medical personnel. Only if a senator or House of Representative go after them, but as we the people, they say, well, they don't have authority. So in this letter, and what I'm doing with a backup letter coming up later on this week after I get these other instruments done, these are other instruments I'm working on and get them done so we get them out and get them done here in the next couple of days. Later on in the week, I'm going to do a response back to this. Why are we funding this structure? I will eventually be emailing it to the entire House and Senate. As well, I'm going to email the structure, what I've done on the dealing with Linda Pilson and the county commissioners dealing with voluntary property taxes, which they know I have on record, which they know I've even had different members of elected and public servants in public meetings admit to it. And that's the one thing that when I brought up the thing last week dealing with the flag, and this is the one point that we've been talking about with the flag. Now, I got a few people sent me back information. I sent that information out to a lot of people, and I got a lot of responses back going, well, what is this about? And it's like, I wrote in the message that we want to get people to send to their congressmen to have them prove what flag is the one that they're flying in the building and what's the purpose of that flag flying in that courtroom or any part of the building. We want them to list the flags of what they are using. Now, everybody I've talked to in the last week, everybody has an opinion on the flag. Well, we don't want opinions from we. We want opinions from elected and public official, county clerk, clerk of the court, elected and public senator, House of Representative, county commissioner, whatever. We want this sent out to everybody so that way we can get a letter from them with their statement, the definition of the flags. See, that's the point. We want them to put it in writing. We want them to have the evidence with their signature claiming what this is. And that's the one thing I'm seeing that people are having some difficulties comprehending this because everybody wants to go out and, yell, scream, and argue and go off on tangents. But when we have simple solutions, how we could get the information so when you go to a court setting, if you end up in a court setting, now you got the evidence that tears apart their whole structure. See, when you go in front of these magistrates that are administrative judges and the circumstances of administrative judge, you have to have factual evidence to back your evidence up, your statements. So by sending it to the House of Representatives and these people, and you don't get a response, you don't get, anything, that tells you right there, too. Of course, I always put in the law of silence in it because of the silence is a fact if they don't respond because by law, they're supposed to respond to every and all letters they get. Technically, they're supposed to respond to each and every one. And we know they don't do that nor to everybody, we don't think, but most of them do. I've seen a lot of them that have responded in the past. So that's what we want to be able to put the stuff in writing so this way we have factual evidence on how we're proceeding in our cases. See, that's the one thing that people I've talked to in the last week are not quite getting part of this. it's like they keep thinking in their mind that they're fighting an uphill battle instead of comprehending that they have rights. Instead of comprehending that these rights are their rights if they actually read the Constitution and utilize it correctly by asking the questions. We have to answer. We have to ask these questions to these public employees. Now, I got one that I'm putting together on the rights to travel, because in the state of Oregon, I have a structure dealing with Dexter Johnson that admitted that you have to have a commercial license to travel. But then again, Dexter Johnson is saying, well, that's up to the House and Senate. So I have the structure on it, and I'm putting it together with the Oregon State law. I'll have that finished up because the Oregon State administrative rules actually clearly state you do not need a driver's license. You do not need insurance. You do not need valid registration. And so, but I do recommend not corporizing your assets. I do recommend filing ownership of your property. And that means, you write up your affidavit, you're claiming ownership, and you put it in your safe. You put a copy up on the bulletin board at the county commissioner meeting. In that way, hey, you're giving kindness to these people, notifying, but see, then again, you really don't have to notify them. But we want to make sure that these men and women, our public servants, comprehend what's going on around them. And this is the major point that we have to do this. So it's like when I'm going to jump back here on what I'm doing with the medical stuff. I'm writing this stuff up on the medical stuff. This is a good offer. Good. I guess one of my letters got read. U.S. agencies offer $1,000 to people who adopt wild horses. Yes. And I'll get that out to a few other things. I'll call up and get that brought out because I've gone through with BLM. I was just talking to Kawashu about it, and Kawashu was telling me about how the horses are running in downtown and near his city, downtown in his city. Well, and I just think it's wonderful the horses are all that thick, but they ain't on the West Coast. Maybe we need to move them out here, throw them in the woods. That's where people don't realize with our wild horses, everybody talks about the doomsday. Well, if doomsday come up, how are you going to transfer around when you got no gas? You have to go back to horses. So that's the point that we need to work on these things to protect ourselves. And so, yeah, it does come down to protecting ourselves and making sure you have an affidavit or an instrument or something like that, so that way you know what's going on around you. People have to figure this part out for themselves of what their faith, what their belief, what their strength is. And once you do that, then you have your pieces where you're not being afraid of what's going on. I was talking to another gentleman dealing with the radiation we got going on here on the West Coast. And I guess people don't realize that West Coast out here, besides Fukushima leaking, that we got Hanford still leaking up there in the Columbia River. So we do have some issues out here, but the whole thing is, I'm jumping around here. I'm getting into a lot of stuff, but I want to get back into the medical issues. When it comes down to your medical, you have to file on that, like when you file on your children to own your children. I got a piece here that I did get out that, let me read this to you. You see, the medical board and the medical hospitals are liable. See, everybody thinks that the hospitals cannot be sued, the corporations cannot be sued. Yes, they can, but it's knowing how to sue them, and this is what we are putting together so we can go after them. And this is how you could actually go after the doctors, because this is what I just wrote and going after them. Failure to diagnose. All right, so if you have a medical condition and you're going in and out of the hospital, these guys have the technology. They really do. People say, well, they don't have all this. Well, they got more than what we people think. So hospitals are liable for the employees' actions. So this hospital staff guy tells me that if I don't have state ID, I cannot be seen. But immigrants and foreign agents and terrorists, they go into hospitals, they don't have ID, and they get listed as a John Doe. So what I'm trying to comprehend, and the guy was sitting there trying to argue with me on the phone, and it's like, dude, you're going to lose this argument because there's no law. I called a couple of senators up, asked them, could you explain to me the law where a hospital says that you have to have ID to be seen, especially when medical conditions. Doesn't matter. And they're like, there is no law, but they need to know who they're seeing in a sense. They need to know, but see, the thing is most of us is already in the records. If you've been in and out of the doctor's office in the last 10 years and filled out more than 2 or 3 paperwork, electronically you're in the system. The hospital says, oh, we don't share information. That's bullshit because the hospital and police department computers are hooked into one. They pass the information back and forth. They know it. When the deal is when a doctor, and I've watched some of these videos where they cops say, well, we don't have people's mental illness stuff. We don't have this. We don't have that. They lie. Bluntly lie. Of course, we know the Supreme Court says cops and attorneys and judges and all of them can lie. Because that's their job. That's all they do is lie anyways. But a doctor who makes a mistake, especially dealing with a patient, misdiagnosis, when it really comes down to it, the hospital insurance is liable under their bond. The one thing is that when you're dealing with elected and public servants, and including hospitals or anything, you always want to ask for their bond or their bond insurance. Always, always ask for that. And always put everything in writing when you do this, because I've talked to a few people that talked to a couple of their servants. They went on hearsay. They tried to get back to them after they put everything in their mouth and spoke it out. The agency would not get back to them. And so when you have it in writing, most of the time they do get back because they don't like it with the paper trail because they have to response. And so we are getting this stuff out on the medical, so that way I'm dealing with it. I've already sent some of this stuff into the Workman's Comp Advisory Board. I've already had a couple of them send me emails back going, interesting. And the one email was, well, Ed, we're going to have to really look at this. And I get that because the Workman's Comp Advisory Board has an issue that I was just sent because I'm on the advisory board, dealing with payment of injured workers. So they're trying to sit there and take more of the money from the injured workers and put it into the lawyer's pocket and the state insurance fund that has failed us. And it really pisses me off because these people put this stuff in these bonds and insurance funds that are ours, and most people don't comprehend it. They don't, when they read stuff, they don't get what they're reading. Most people do not comprehend those circumstances. That's why the one thing is with your court system, I've been on the phone this week with many people, and I got more and more people that are comprehending and watching Interstate 60. I've had a couple responses back from people that thought it was very intriguing and extremely eye-opening. And that's the whole point, that we want to make sure that we're doing not only for ourselves, but for everybody out there. Eye-opening. This is how we're supposed to, respond to one another. This is how we're supposed to take care of each other, protecting lawful Americans as well as immigrants, illegal immigrants. These illegals, these people are on Facebook whining because this guy's been here all of his life and now he's being deported after 42 years. Dude, you don't come into somebody's home and say you're going to put a flag up in somebody's home and sit in their lounge chair with their remote to their TV and tell them that they don't have rights in their own home. This is one thing immigrants have got to get it, because we're not an open country to the world. And this is what disturbs me on medical process, because the immigrants are getting medical. They are getting medical off of the alleged taxpayers, because technically we're not supposed to pay taxes if we're lawful. And the other point with that, it really comes down to the circumstances. We're not supposed to pay that at all. It's already covered. It's already prepaid. It's under the Bankruptcy Act. And those things do matter. And this is one thing that people don't realize. They do matter even with your medical personnel structure. Because if the state is claiming that they own you, okay, the state will claim it owns you or your bloodline or your children, so long as that you didn't file for yourself or to claim yourself out of the system, which I do recommend you do. Rob Ryder has a wonderful video on that, 2 of them. Own yourself and claim yourself. And I've had people say, well, you can't do that. Yes, you can. You have to make sure you file. I've got another third opinion on it, too, about going in and filing for your name to get out of the capital to the lower upper in a court. And so I have not seen the process of that clearly yet. I've heard tale of these such things. But I have I've read a couple of things. I picked up some information that was sent to me recently on that, which I got to read. But I've heard a lot of tale on this stuff. Until I could actually see somebody's provenly done it more than once, and they have successfully done it, I'll go for it. That's like these people claiming that, oh, you can claim your what is that? Your Social Security number to pay everything off. We all know it's there in the House Resolution 192, and trying to get that accomplished, which we are still working on, because we agree that needs to be done. And so we're all still working on those things. But I want to make sure that you comprehend what's going on with the medical society, because in the state of Oregon, they have publicly admitted to starve the mentally disturbed people. Tell time, anything. Anybody who has a mental disability, and if they're in a state hospital, could be starved to death now. Doesn't matter what it is. They can starve your family to death. This is a fact. This is what they're doing for the birth certificate insurance bond, for the funding of it. These men and women truly do know the funding of these circumstances. They know the money is there. They know the liability is there. And when these men and women say, oh, we don't know this, and I've had these doctors, I've had a lot of medical personnel that have come forward and said, yeah, we know about this, yeah, we know about that. And it's just amazing how these people are so insensitive today. That is the one thing that people don't get, how sensitive the subjects that we're getting into, because if we don't protect one another, there is no future. There is no future. And that's the one thing about this education is that, getting your kids to start getting this stuff now. I don't care if they're 5 years old. When they're 5, 7, they're going to have more comprehension than most teenagers do, and a lot more than adults do. And this is the one thing that people have got to start working with one another instead of arguing. Like I was talking, bringing up an idea dealing with people who keep going after abortion, okay? What the hell are we arguing about abortion for? Truly. It's none of your business what somebody else does. It's none of your business what somebody else does with their life and body. People say, well, I have a right to have my opinion. Well, then when the courts have their opinion, what the hell are you bitching about? See, these are things that we're dealing with right now today. Literally dealing with right now today. And so, seeing that we've got these issues that we are dealing with, the medical and the court systems and all this stuff, it's coming up with the best solution of how we're handling these things. And working together. That is one of the most major points, is working together on these things. Because if we don't work together on these things, what future does anybody else have, including ourselves, if we don't comprehend what's going on right now around us and these circumstances of what we're living? And some of the stuff we are living is pretty darn crazy when you think about it. You know, everybody keeps talking about we're going to have this war, we're going to have that war. Everybody keeps talking about we're going to go through nuclear explosions in the world. You know, how come do we have to sit there and keep being taught to live in fear? That's sort of what disturbs me, because everybody wants to talk about living in fear instead of living life. And so, I mean, I'm seeing the point, especially what these doctors are doing. You know, they're coming up with these things how they can dispose of us. And like I said, anybody would like a copy of that letter that I sent out to the doctors, I'll be more than happy to pass that around to anybody. You know my email, so I'll be more than glad to pass that information on so you can read what I sent to the doctors. And I sent them, they wrote it, I quote it. So it's just that simple. Really is that simple. They wrote it, I quoted it. So I just wanted to make sure that people comprehend this stuff, dealing with what's going on with the medical and, you know, our system. Remember, this is our system. This is not the elected and public employees that own us. And if people want to sit there and go argue these points of view that they own us and that they given up on life themselves, so, well, you're giving up on life, we don't want to hear it. We want to move on. We want stuff that is going to start producing. We want to make sure our country is start evolving around, oh, that's right, we the people. Because it is so darn disturbing that we're going through all these crazy terminologies of the way we're supposed to be living and the stuff that we're fighting. Because every time we turn around, we realize they got something else they changed in administrative rules so that way to arm themselves. Well, we get the way they've armed themselves. We get the way that they have protected themselves. We know that they have been successful on doing what they have done, protecting themselves. But now we're putting together stuff that is protecting ourselves as well. And so when we're putting together these instruments to protect ourselves, that's where we need your help too on these things. So when we put out the stuff for the flag, as many people, we would like to get you to send it to your senator, your congressman, anybody you know who's elected a public servant, so that way we can ask them to define the flag that's in their office, in their building. You know, and I'm going to put that into the letter. I've asked some people, most of the emails I got back, people are saying, looks good, Ed, you know, just send us what you finish up, and, you know, they say you got a good start, let's just start, you know, go with that. I like to get a little bit more finer, that's why I put it out for other people's thoughts into the circumstances, because I want more people to get involved, and we are getting more and more people involved. We'd like to see a few more people involved than what we got. That's just my my feeling. We got quite a few people involved. We got a lot of people that are moving on different directions. You know, and a lot of us we got our own fires in the irons with other folks as well. That, you know, most people are working on different cases. Most people are working on different structures, not only for themselves but others. And so tying up some of this stuff so we can get them to produce this stuff in paperwork, in evidence, to produce, like, you know, we get a response back from one of them, the definition of the gold fringe flag. So if we get a definition from them, now that's not hearsay evidence in any court. Even though that we know Executive Order 10834 is truly effective, but the only way that we can make that executive order ping, let's just say ping, the only way that could be working, the only way, is that once we sit there and put that out and we start getting these letters coming back from these elected and public servants, now we have evidence of their words of the determination of the meaning of that flag. So we can see if we get 3 or 4 different thoughts on the flag, and if not, then we get 1 or 2. We know it's in a ballpark, you know. It's putting these things up so that way we get to know what our public servants are thinking as well of their positions. I mean, you know, they said billions of dollars psychologically pulling us and detecting us and tearing us apart psychologically for their own personal financial gain. That's a fact. We know it. And so once people start accepting that fact and we know the truth of all this stuff, that way we don't have to bounce back and forth. So when we get this thing out here in the next couple of days, like I said, we will have this out in the next couple of days coming out, dealing with the circumstances of their oath of the flag is what we're hoping. The one thing is I did put in this letter to the quacks was supposedly the Hippocratical oath that they're supposed to take, not only to what they call their board, the medical board. And I did put that in the letter too. I put in some of their own statistics too, because seeing that all these men and women like statistics on mental retardation and all this stuff where it comes from, I like to put it in because they know where it comes from. Them, they write it. You know, I'm still shocked that now in the state of Oregon, this is the one thing that Alzheimer's, any patient that what they consider a mental illness. You know, people don't get it. Mentally ill patients, you don't get mentally ill is an open door for any word that they could consider mental. So if they put you in jail a psychological purpose, they could starve you to death in jail. They could starve you to death in the hospital with this. All they have to put is that, well, we think he's mentally, or she thinks he's mentally ill. What the hell does mentally ill mean? It's a big open door. And that's the one thing. It shows me where the medical society and the insurance companies are working on this on the birth certificate. So this way they can roll in on people's assets twice as fast. Because now they eliminated by this, unless you file and own yourself, they eliminated, and the state just sat there and stated that they own you and your child, and they can murder you anytime that they want. And that's what it means. Anybody with Alzheimer's, dementia, they can starve you to death. They can murder you. Anybody who has mental disability from birth defects, they can murder you because that's what do they call that? That's mentally ill. The birth defect technically is mentally ill. So in the medical journals, I don't comprehend sometimes how people don't see how these things are written in such a fashion to open a door so that way the insurance companies can make the money, the lawyers make the insurance companies money. Every time the House and Senate passes a bill that they get so much money off of income off a bill, that rolls in instead of it's supposed to go out when they do that, or especially lawsuits, class action lawsuits are supposed to go back to the people that are injured, but they don't. The attorneys in the House and Senate keeps it right into their pocket. They form these non-profit agencies that don't do nothing for the people, only make the pocketbook richer for selected few around them, as we know. But, like I said, the letter that I wrote them, I'm going to see what kind of response I get from this when I get from these people. I'm still going to my appointment because, to me, you know, even though it's a verbal contract, and now I got the email to confirm the deal that I sent him out, the email for the appointment. You know, and this is for chronic pain patients, all right? In the state of Oregon now, they want you to sign a contract, but they don't want to give you real pain medication. They want to give you mental, psychological pills, because in the state of Oregon now, nobody has terminal or physical disabilities. They're mentally ill. So we need to give you psychological medication to deaden your nerves of your brain to your structure. And they were giving me some pills that were supposed to deaden the nerves to my brain so that way I wouldn't feel pain. But they were antidepressants. And I'm like, shit. I mean, I get so sick and tired of these people trying to give you antidepressants and trying to list you as mentally challenged. But that's what mental depression is. When they try to say that mentally depressed pills are there for pain and we're helping you out, that's bullshit. To put you in, to reclassify you in the medical structure. That's when they do these surveys and they go to the Capitol and the House and Senate pass these bills and they get these fundings to pay. And now that's the one thing they've been doing is passing these bills and funding bills, raising this money. Technically, it's supposed to go to we the people, and that's either the direct deposit or our check. Excuse me, for us to spend, not for them to put in their corporation and delegate like now that they can decide who's going to live or die. So I put that letter out today, and like I said, I'll send it out to anybody who wants it. I'm going to send it out to the news media. I don't care. Because I want to make sure that people know that I'm not playing this game for them, so that way they can try to classify me and do all this even with property tax. Because I got to be very public on what I'm doing, and I got to be very honest and open, and make sure that I've got this paperwork the best of my ability. Because when they're sitting there now, it says that they can starve you to death in a hospital. They can starve you to death and classify you as mentally ill. So if they classify you as mentally ill going into a jail cell, goodbye. I mean, that's what it says there too. People don't get it. Oh, well, it only says the hospital. No, it doesn't. It says the mentally ill. People have to learn how to comprehend how something means when it says it instead of people interpreting something else. Now, I'm still surprised that the Senate and House, well, I shouldn't be surprised to pass this mentally ill bill. I mean, this goes back to Sister Teresa. Sister Teresa was one of those that believed everybody should suffer in pain, supposedly like what they call Jesus Christ did. Jesus Christ supposedly suffered in pain, what they call on a T or a cross, whatever way you want to go. There's two different opinions that are out there. It wasn't a cross, it was a T, and then it was a T, and then it was a cross. But the bottom line comes into is that, when they're putting this stuff out and they're telling chronic pain people that you're supposed to die of pain, and that's what we're doing to our veterans today, too, as well, folks. Veterans are being told to starve to death today. Veterans are told to die. And we're doing this. We are literally doing this to the people today, which stuns me. Now, we allow this to go on. How we allow these things to happen in our own families to go on. And we allow this stuff to happen. People need to realize that if we don't start standing up, they're doing population control for DNAs, so that way once your bloodline is gone, you don't exist. It's already a proven fact. It's been passed by administrative rules, and it's what they've been passing up at the Oregon State House and Senate. Each state has been doing that. Literally, each state has been doing that. And that's where people have got to realize that point. And you've got to put these pieces together. So by putting this letter out and bringing that information forward, I'm bringing that information forward to you folks so that way you have it. Because if we don't sit there and defend, first ourselves, because nobody else is going to do it. And now they've passed administrative bills that says that they can basically murder you, and you're not standing up against these bills, at least putting something in writing against them, an affidavit to speak against them, because an attorney is supposed to represent a corporation, as we know. And we know how some of these ratified court systems work under bullshit. So I'm just saying, let's put your paperwork together. Have it ready. Have it set up. Because this way, when you got your paperwork together, they can't go against it. Well, they can go against anything they want, but they're going to have a tougher time when you got people around it that are defending it. So it is very frustrating that the state is allowing people to starve to death. And you know they're doing that deliberately. Could you imagine what that could even have in welfare departments dealing with, children, DHS starving kids because it's too expensive to feed the kids when they're in the system. Okay, that looks like almost a reality to me. You know, these men and women are rape, robbing, and pillaging right now in front of us, and they're getting away with it because most people don't have the knowledge. A lot of people are scared to stand up. And a lot of people don't even have the knowledge of what they think that they do know. So putting some of these pieces of these puzzles together and coming forth with it is the best thing we really can do for ourselves. And the one thing is, I definitely would like to bring to people's attention, if you know anybody's got land out there, go get a horse. Nevada's giving them adoption free for $1,000 and free. If I had the land, I'd go over there and get a couple. Because, I mean, you know, they want to get rid of fossil fuels. That's what everybody says, but we got more and more fossil fuel digging than we did before. So doesn't that make it an interesting structure there? You know, everybody says we want to be environmental friendly. I keep questioning what environmental friendly are they talking about? That's the one I just cannot comprehend. Which one are they really talking about? So, you know, it's like everybody says, well, Ed, you don't need to email this out to everybody. You haven't got a response back. No. You know, when you've gone through a lot of things that what we have gone through, you know, you get old enough, you've already been through all this, you get to a point where enough's enough. So we do have to speak out. And so, no, I'll get that to you. And then I got another one that I'm finishing up on the circumstances of vaccinations. I'll have that one done here pretty soon. I've got another one I'm putting together for births for born children, not birth children, born children. So we'll be working on getting a few more of these things up and posted, like templates or ideas, guesstimates, because we don't want your liability. We want you to be responsible for yourself, but we're throwing out ideas so that way. The main point is so that we have responsible men and women, and that's when we get them. That's how we're going to have our court system start responding responsibly. I mean, a lot of people throw their hands up in the air on what's going on in our court systems, but we do get people out there that are getting some victories. We do have some people out there that are actually paying attention to what's going on, and they're serving their public servants, and they're getting responses. So that's what I'm saying. We get this stuff served out, especially on this one now with the flag, and let's see what kind of responses we get back. Because it's worth it. Because if they're responding back and they're, you know, let them put the claim on the deal of where it comes from. Let them put the claim on it. Once they put the claim on it themselves, then that way we use their responsibility, their wording. Remember, under the so-called corporation game, they are representatives. And I do recommend, too, if you've been involved in a traffic issue, make sure you request them to be your representative in writing. That's why I try to explain to people. I've had several people I've talked to the last couple of weeks. I've said this, and I talked to so-and-so, and I told them this, and I told that, dealing with elected and public servants. And it's like, you guys don't get it. When you talk to them and then they don't call you back, it's hearsay evidence. When you talk to them, and not all public employees are bad. I do talk to quite a few. I do have quite a few that's comprehend what I'm doing, believe in what I'm doing, and have no problem giving me information and responding to me. And so, like I said, I've got this other letter I'm going to email out to a couple senators today, too, dealing with the doctors on this, because I think I need to do that. Especially, excuse me, especially the ones I talked to this last week for the letter I put together for the pain center, pain clinic. And it amazes me in Oregon, they want you to sign this contract for the pain center that says if you have anything else, any other drug in your system, that, you can go to prison for it. You can lose all your drugs for all that. They're stripping away your constitutional right. These medical personnel are working with the corporation to strip your rights of freedom away through the medical providers. Your medical providers don't believe in the Constitution, number one. Don't forget, doctors really do believe that they are gods. They believe they're not human. They have the power to control life and death. Some of these men and women actually do feel that they're superior in that fashion, too. Of course, they are at the time when we're dealing with them, too, especially in a life and death situation. These are things that we do deal with that are there. But we have to be realistic in a lot of these points of view, how we're going after these things. And that is the one thing that when we do this, and we start comprehending the structure, and we're nailing these men and women on this stuff, they can't sit there and argue back and forth on it. They have to sit there and admit to some truth, and if they don't, well, we're all in an argument over it. So it is about one of those things of how to accomplish the circumstances of these things. And that is the point that we need to comprehend of what's in front of our face and how we're doing that. So anyhow, I got into quite a few things this evening on this. I wanted to bring up the point dealing with the medical providers, especially when they're sitting there telling you, well, if you don't have state ID, we can't see you. But if an immigrant comes into our office, they don't have to have ID. We just call them John or Jane Doe. So they're not supposed to have rights when you're an American, because we want to sit there and take the DNA and destroy this country, so that way if you are a foreign immigrant, you have more rights than the Americans on this soil. And that's what some of these men and women are doing, and some of these men and women, if you actually know this, is very interesting. They're immigrants themselves, and are doing this and attacking us in our own medical structure. And they're going against us on doing this is very disturbing to us.
If I may.
Go ahead.
Don't you think, Ed, them asking that you need to have state ID is to prove that you are a Little C citizen, part of the slave thing of the corporation, so that they have full power over you?
Exactly. That's what I wanted to get into, but you got it, because medically, that's exactly what they want. Medically, so that way I have to bow to the medical providers if I want to live or die. I ask permission for them to live or die. Yeah, you got a valid point there. And that's the one point I want to be able to bring to the table here, folks. Because you have to realize that these men and women are telling you that I own your body. They know it. The whole thing is that these men and women do know what they're truly doing. And when they try to tell you, "Oh, I never heard that," most of them, some of them, maybe a few of them, yeah, maybe don't. But I do know a lot of them do know what's going on. I do know for a fact that they do know what's going on because they get bonus checks when people die on different circumstances. And that is a fact. They really do get bonus checks on these things when people die. That's like the lawsuits when the House and Senate passes a bill and they raise all this money up so that way they can put back in their own pockets. And truly, that's what they're doing, is putting it back in their own pockets. It is a fact. And it is truly a fact that they do this. And, it's really disturbing because our children pay the price for this. They know the truth of it. They truly do know of the financial responsibilities of the birth certificate bond. And in this letter, I spelled it all out in this letter, right down to the teeth of it all. So if they don't know it, that by the time they read this letter, they have the evidence where they cannot dispute it. Period. They cannot dispute the evidence. It's by their own structure. It's by their own commercial studies. And that's what I'm saying, is that we do get their studies involved in these things. We need to make sure that they are the liable instrument party of this. Because they are sitting there issuing basically our life and death warrant, in a sense. Because now they're saying that, if you get put into a mental institution or anything like that, or incarcerated, because a mental institution to me is like carceration, and if you get incarcerated, then you are sitting there being told that you could die. It's like that attorney I have on YouTube with me and McCrum, Ed Johnston and McCrum on YouTube, where it's very, very simple on that, where he's sitting there going, "Well, Ed, if they murder you, it's not called murder, it's called a homicide." That's his words, not mine. That's the system's words. So when you hear homicide, usually that means somewhere in the government murdered that man or woman. Homicide means murder. Exactly what it means. And that's the one thing that people have got to realize, the way these men and women double talk. The way they do these things to double talk for personal and financial gain. They do it deliberately. They're not out there being nice and polite and all this, that they want to protect you and they want to protect your rights. They're more interested in their own paycheck than in protecting your rights, because their paycheck is a very large amount, usually. And it's interesting that they say, well, people in the medical field start out, at these low wages. Not all of them do. I mean, and that's the whole point of selling yourself when you're going to a job. You have to sell yourself. You have to be able to say that you know how to do that employment, or else you're not going to be hired. So this is the one thing that disturbs me when we have these things that are going on around us, that we're not accomplishing a lot of these things. We're not getting a lot of this accomplished. So we start accomplishing more and more of these things, we're going to see a lot more opening up, not only the House and Senate, but other areas. I wanted to bring up, and if anybody knows about Diamond and Silk, they did an interesting job testifying at the Capitol, seeing that they went after them for being on Facebook and bringing out some structures. And, I've been sending some information to them for some time. And it's interesting because sometimes you see, when you watch their commentary, sometimes you see interesting things brought up. So they do bring things out in their commentaries that's the one thing they do, read a lot of stuff that other people send them. They bring them out in their commentaries. But I've been finding it very interesting how they're all of a sudden like the center of attraction from Facebook, because Facebook decided to cancel them because they thought that they were controversial enough not to be able to. And thank you, that's a good point. What we have going on YouTube is dealing with homicide definition. And that is the one thing that people need to realize, these things that are going on. And like I said, they classify it as a homicide or murder. So with your birth certificate insurance bond, don't forget, in wartime, they have wartime insurance bond on every man and woman. That includes we the people. Doesn't matter if you're a soldier or not. You're considered in wartime, so they already have insurance on you by your birth certificate bond in wartime. And that's one thing that people don't realize. I just put out information on that earlier. And actually, I put that in the letter that I sent to the doctor, and I did send it out to a few people this afternoon. And like I said, anybody else who would like a copy of it, I'll be more than happy to send you a copy, because I have nothing to be bashful about. I mean, I'm fighting for my land. I'm fighting for my medical. I mean, these people have gone after me, trying to classify me as different things. At one point, they wanted me on morphine because of my pain structure. And I'm like, no, you get me on that. And then all of a sudden, and that's what happened, I quit cold turkey and withdrawal. And they were shocked because they do this to you. They try to get you listed as a drug addict. By even the medication that the doctors give you, try to do that. And that is a known fact. They've tried it on me a couple times. I've stopped it 6 times. I've had to put affidavits in my medical records 6 times. They have corrected the doctor's statements that a couple times where the doctors went off on different things trying to classify me because of the system here, because of, friends, family, or whatnot in the system. I mean, Gene Cowan's son was Dr. Travis Cowan. Travis Cowan, Gene Cowan's son, politics, trying to put me away medically, and that didn't work. So, I mean, no, I know how these families work. These men and women work in their structure, and then when you find out their bloodline, and that's what I tell people, you got to find out who your elected and public officials are. You got to see who their children are. You got to see who their brother and sister are. And people go, well, that has no price in tea in China. And these men and women, they're not going to sit there and go against their structure. Wake up, folks. They sell themselves out for a piece of paper called a retirement plan. Their retirement plan is what they're going for. They don't care about you. As soon as you comprehend that, you win. That is the one thing that you win. And that is the one thing that we need to start making sure that these judgments go through. We got to make sure that these judgments that we're working on are completed. And we got to make sure these filings that we're getting out there go through. Because once we get them through, that's when we're going to start seeing the multiple changes going through. And you will see them. They are happening. Excuse me. I've been watching things changing through the House and Senate. You've been watching Senate bills and administrative bills changing here lately. So, I mean, it is taking time. We would like to see things going a little faster. Trust me. Same with me. But it's just not the way it is happening right now. But we are seeing some changes, but it is taking an eye-opening for these changes to be acquired. So, anyhow, I'm going to open up the floor to see what we could come up with and see if anybody got some stuff they would like to throw in. And like I said, anybody who gets a hold of me, definitely I'll send you copies of what I've sent out, so that way people can actually see it. So this way you can see what I put in writing, you can see what I've done, so you know what I've done is me, so that way there's not a conflict of interest. So why don't we open up the floor?
All participants are unmuted.
Anybody like to bring something up on the floor today?
May I?
Floor is yours.
This is a little in harmony with what you're talking about tonight. So I'll just go through some of the corporations that are owned by the state of Oregon. And it's a board of licensed professional counselors and therapists. So that's a corporation. That's a state of Oregon corporation. Another one is Board of Psychologist Examiners. It's another corporation owned by the state of Oregon. Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities Services Division. That's another corporation that's owned by the state of Oregon. Oregon Department of Human Resources. That's another corporation owned by the state of Oregon. Psychiatric Review Board. That's another corporation owned by the state of Oregon. Oregon Disabilities Commission. It's another corporation owned by the state of Oregon. Health Licensing Office, owned by the state of Oregon. It's another corporation. Health Related Licensing Boards, owned by another corporation, state corporation. Board of Nursing, another state corporation. I just wanted to mention that that's just some of the corporations to control mental problems, throw it out there, and, you know, it's all done by corporations owned by a corporation called the state of Oregon. It just keeps making more corporations to control the people out here and to control the money, exactly what you're saying, and to control their life. And when they die, to benefit off of the Ensley's account, which is started out, whether you know it or not, it was only $10,000 many years ago when it started. I don't know what it is today. I know it's a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Than 10,000. But that's just some of the state of Oregon corporations that control everything. And then they have the Public Employees Retirement System, another state corporation that almost all of these people belong to. Teachers and you know, legislative assembly, state treasury.
Don't forget their religious cult, because they're a union.
Well, yeah, but you know, all this money goes into their own quote quote private corporation called the Public Employee Retirement System, otherwise known as the PERS. And corporations are formed to get larger, to make more money. So Oregon's got lots of corporations. How can a private individual compete? Not very well. And as you know, Kate Brown wants to tax all of the small businesses in Oregon out of business. They don't like the competition.
No, they want to turn this into the gay country for foreigners to come to. They don't want Americans anymore here.
Well, of course not. They don't want lawful capital C citizens. They don't want the Constitution.
No, they can't do that because, yeah.
They can make economic slaves out of everybody, voluntary economic slaves, 14th Amendment citizens, small c citizens, national citizens.
Right.
Oh, that way they can control you from birth, or born, if they can figure out how, but from birth until death. That's all I have to say.
No, that's a good point. We appreciate that. Because that's the one thing that people got to realize, that all these corporations are union owned. So they're telling you that if you don't go by their administrative rules, is like what they're telling me. You don't have this ID, we cannot see you. And it's like, excuse me? But the illegal immigrant goes in, and even federal law says that you cannot deny me. So it's just amazing how this gets all wrapped around and basically confused for people that don't comprehend how the structure works. And once you start comprehending how the structure works, it's not scary, to tell you the truth. You just realize that, excuse me, when you step out of the movie and you watch the production of how this was all put in place and in tuned, it's pretty amazing when you really think about it. And you figure it took them, remember, this didn't happen overnight. This has taken several, decades for them passing administrative rules and administrative structures for them to come up to this conclusion. And that's the one thing, too. People have to sort of look at that point, how that has come together with that, how it became where it is today. That's the one thing that people do not comprehend, how it's become where it is today. And so once we start putting these things that we're putting together on these things that are transpiring today, now we got something that is, we got statements. We've got things that nobody can sit there and say that we don't know this, we don't know that. And that is the one thing that we want to make sure elected and public servants know, that we know their job. So long as that we're putting these things in and we are knowing their employment, we know that they have to have in bonds. We know that they cannot, if they don't have a bond, they cannot be on the job. But we have to file that. And this is where people don't realize that we have to file this stuff. If we don't file it, it does not exist.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
On all these government corporations, remember, there's a lot of people that make a lot of money being on the board of directors of these state corporations. Some of them are on several of the boards for these state corporations. And always remember, there's two sets of books.
Maybe three.
It could be three, but we know there's at least two sets. I know. I've been there on that. But it's all about the money and the power and control.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget that the board of directors for all of these entities, corporations, and if they just sit back and say, hey, we need another corporation, well, they file another corporation. Here's another board of directors for that corporation. And Oregon's got a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Yeah, no, they keep creating them. So when I get done with the conversation tonight, I'm going to be posting up on the video, the YouTube Oregon Trackers video. I will post all the structure of what I filed at the doctor's office, including what I filed on the county clerk, as much as I can on it. Besides, because I'm not going to be able to put all the links I have, including the links that I got from New Hampshire, that the New Hampshire Superior Court over there said the police or the sheriff's department has no lawful authority to arrest anybody because they're a corporation. And
May
they wrote it. Go ahead.
I think that's Delaware.
I think you're probably right. I think I might have misspoke. I did that before, didn't I?
Yes.
So I don't have a problem. So, yeah. And so that's the one thing that people need to realize when they do these things, that when a state superior court passes a case like that, it's supposed to go to all 48 states. And that's where people don't realize that once Constitution violation has been proven, all states are supposed to be on the same page of it. Because we are not a democracy, we're a Republican form of government. That's the clarification of the classification we need to do with each other. So, I mean, we get to know these things, you know, it makes it easier that way. So, food for thought on that one. So, and like I said, it is really horrifying when you think about it that the state of Oregon has passed administrative rules so that way not only could the cops murder you, they're getting away with, now they got it so the medical society can murder you and get away with it. They've already passed it so attorneys can murder you and lawyers can murder you and get away with it. I mean, you know, that's where people go, well, I need to go to church. That's why I keep with my point, man. Why are you going to church to the devil? Because all these men and women that are passing all these bills and these administrative bills destroying this country are the ones that go to church. These are your people that are your religious people. Doesn't matter what religion. And that's the point. People have got to realize religion. You know, I mean, people who have honesty don't do this stuff. You know, and then when we comprehend that, I believe it is 12 U.S.C. 411 clearly states you cannot pay debt with a federal debt note. And I did put out the information dealing with the law on that, the administrative rules. And so, and I put some of that even into the medical stuff that I put out to the doctors, you know, telling me that, oh, if I don't have their ID, they can't see me. But it's interesting. I go to all these other doctors' appointments that I have, and they all know me by face recognition. I don't never show them ID. I'm not in their ID system like everybody says. When you go to a doctor, show me ID. I need to put the picture in the computer. Well, trust me, they know who I am in their computer. I've been fighting this for my broken neck for 22 years. Well, I got my neck broken on the job, so I mean, they know me. You know, I made sure that people knew me. Because I didn't break my neck deliberately. I was one of those guys that got injured on the job for defending people that came into nightclubs. You know, so that was the one thing. I'm defending people's lives, and then, you know, then when you get injured, they just turn on you and throw you away, and you're supposed to go roll over and die because you're a burden on their corporation. And I know that because, I mean, I've personally been living it for 22 years. A lot of it I wouldn't believe until I personally lived it. That's why I sent the stuff to what I just sent to this doctor, and I included him in the email that I sent to the medical board and to the advisory committees, because I wanted these people to make sure that they know that, you know, I know that they know that we know. So this way it's all there. They've got it. So I want to make sure that they comprehend that the medical boards have got it, because like I said, the Workman's Comp Board is going after trying to cut the damn the bill that we just got for a new bill that they want to pass through the Oregon State House and Senate, is to cut the disabled worker, injured job, man and woman, cut their pay another 20%. So it goes into the state coffers, so that way they get to decide how they're going to spend it on their parties, and they're taking that from the disabled. So that's the other reason why I put this into That's the other reason why I put this into the boards, because it's our right, my right. So that's the thing that gets to me about it. If it's my right, then I'm supposed to have my rights, and so I'm just speaking out on my rights. So I'm just making sure that it is well known, because this is something. Medically, I've been fighting with chronic pain. I got spinal stenosis. I got 5 discs literally in the spinal cord. I got a crushed back. It's not that I'm sitting out here, whining. And I know that sometimes I might whine because I'm in a severe pain. But it's life. I can't change what's happened. But men and women, like especially in my position or the elderly, are not supposed to be pain and suffering. But their attitude is, let's kill them off, let's murder them, let's get them out of the system as quick as we can. We've got to get the other ones to roll over their bonds. And then we got these immigrants and illegals that are getting disability, they're getting food stamps, they're getting Social Security, and they're getting birth certificates. That's crime. That's illegal. And so that's the one thing we got to change. Because one thing I'll tell you this from experience and knowledge, that I've watched the purpose of some of these House bills and Senate bills and paid attention of how congressional bills and this stuff work, that they're going after the funding mechanism on us, so that way their children don't get nothing if they do get it, because that's the one thing that we need to file on them, liability structure. And so when you do file your cases on these men and women, you don't forget to go after the kids' inheritance. Unless you got compassion, I'll get you on that. But that depends if their children have any type of heart or not. Do your research. Check these things out. We've got to make sure that these things are available to us. We got to make sure that the children are not living through this living hell. More than what they're already living. Because it's really sad when these kids are being kidnapped and held for ransom. It's sad that we're getting kidnapped and held for ransom, and not only that, our medical, it's like I'm going through this in medical. I'm not the only one. I know there's other people who have gone through medical issues or dental issues. But bringing it out, we have to bring it out. And then when I was talking to the Oregon Medical Society or the Oregon Medical Board, because I called them up and I'm like, well, shit, I'm going to file a complaint and do a little whining on this quack. And they're telling me, well, they have no authority. Of course, we know the medical board has no authority because the medical society is like the law firm attorneys. Their bar card, just like the medical, they write their own contracts, their own circumstances, their own structure, so they're not liable to we the people. And that's the one thing that people have to realize, that that's how they get away with this, through the legal system. Remember, legal is the Vatican British court system. And that even goes back to, what is that called? I think they call it Christianity. I think they called it, what was that? The wars, the Christian wars. Christian Crusades. And we're still dealing with that today. When you do a lot of this research and you start looking at these stuff and you're realizing that we're still going through a lot of this stuff today as what's going back in, because these families have passed it down for generations to keep us entangled in this. A lot of us haven't been smart enough to pay attention to the truth on this, and so we support it in some regards, and that's what we're living today. We're dealing with this today. And, it's like everybody keeps going, they determine Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Who declared that? The United Nations? Come on, folks. Remember, the United Nations is the British government and Nazi Germany that founded the United Nations. World War II. And right now in the United States, of this country of the 48 states, we're living no different than Nazi Germany did. If you don't take the right medication that's prescribed by a doctor, you go to jail. If you don't fart in the wind correctly, you can go to jail. You know, I mean, and this is the point. And you're not even allowed due process in this court system that they're portraying us, even though that we are. But that's what I'm saying. You have to pay attention to the instruments you're writing. A lot of these we do have honorable elected and public officials out there. I've seen it, and I do pat some of these honorable men on the back, you know, and that's the same thing that when we got honorables, we just respect them, we go on. When the court case is dismissed, we don't argue about it, we go on. But, I mean, we got a lot of things around us we don't need to argue about, but the main thing is that when we're getting these things accomplished, and we start seeing these things that are being what they are for, dealing with us, protecting our rights. I mean, that's the one thing I did serve this in these letters too. And if you don't have it, I'll be more than happy to send it to you. Is the notice of clerk. Because when you file your instruments, if you put the notice of clerk information into your letters, and when you're autographing them, your instruments, you have it. That way the clerk is advised, including with the clerk, city, whatever, because whatever clerk it is, even the law firm, dental board, even the veterinarian clerk at the veterinarian hospital, they have to go by the law. So if a clerk does not file the paperwork correctly, they are liable. They can go to jail. And so it is a parent that helps to put these laws in your instruments, because a lot of people go, well, you can't do nothing. Well, once you put it in the law in the instrument, now all of a sudden they're liable. I mean, it's creating the evidence for them to be liable compared to putting something in that has no meaning. You always want to put something in that has meaning in your work. The other point, too, that you could always put in Mail Manual 602 SSS 1.3E 2 zip code not required. Zip codes were not required in this country until corporations went through until after 1963. I believe that was called the Uniform Commercial Code went through. But until the post office wasn't requiring zip codes and corporations and all that until it started after the Administration Act in 1947 is when the post office in 1947 started issuing out zip codes. And if you remember back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, they used to ship children through the United States mail. That's a fact. They used to ship children through the mail. And most people go, well, they couldn't have done that. Yes, they did. Children was a stamped property that could be shipped. Remember, your mail is property, and that is stamped, and that is shipped. Okay? I mean, it is interesting. And then the other point that the one thing that Kawashu has been doing with some of his stuff to get it certified, he's taking it to the post office, and he's getting it certified through the post office, because the post office is higher than any notary. And so he's been doing it that way, so that way he's got the federal government signing it primarily instead of the corporation. And yeah, it's not a bad point of view, you know. I mean, with me, I can't get to post office, and my problem with the post office in my community, the postmaster here in my town in Newport and Toledo have been filtering my mail and deciding what I can get. And it's already recorded. It's been filed. I'm still going through the runaround in circles and the games with all these people, going back and forth, but I got to start getting back on going after the Postmaster General, spending a little bit more direct time on that because I haven't done that here in the last few weeks because of everything else, but I haven't stopped. I stopped going after them when I shouldn't have. So now I've got to put things together and start going back after them heavier, because seeing that this stuff is moving with the medical and what I filed on the county, now I can put the rest of it together. Because all these people fall in the same place. Some of these people are not only brothers and sisters of each other. That is the one thing that you got to pay attention to is how many of these people went to the same school, the same university, the same circumstances. I mean, most people don't think about this type of stuff, but it does matter. It does have an inflection on what's going on. So, I mean, it is learning about your community, who's in your community, who are the relatives in your community of so-and-so or this man or this woman or cousin to this or that. Because these things actually do matter because some of these people, they're not like all families that are crazy torn apart by the system. And some of these families that are in the elected and public servants union, they strive on that, even though their families what they call dysfunctional. Of course, they always come up with all these fancy names. It's like, you're not supposed to be free. You're supposed to be, stamped. And they come up with, like I said, these names on these circumstances. I mean, it's like a dishwasher, They're coming up with fancy names for dishwasher. I mean, it's amazing what some of the structures are coming up with on these things, and we're supposed to tolerate it. See, that's the one thing that people have got to, we got to stop this. That's why it's so important getting this stuff out. It's so important to making this point, and it's like I'm getting ready to probably email this other stuff to the House and Senate, which I have not done on some of it because I want to see what kind of response I can get from the media or anything. I mean, it's always worth the response to see what kind of response you're getting. But then I know what I'm putting out, literally, it's got some people terrified for exposing some of this truth because, because once people start realizing this truth is the way it is and we're not supposed to pay our bills and people are speaking up, we've been watching it through the media. Some of the media is starting to write true stories on the circumstances and the real facts of what's going on. So it is taking time, and people are waking up. And so, like I said, and the other point too, I got to bring this up to people too. And the territory of Oregon State Corporation, under Oregon Statute 446576, manufacturer structures not required to document or record in county deeds of record. So this is dealing with your manufactured homes, folks, and that includes what they would call an RV is a manufactured home too in some of their writings. So 446576, you don't need to register your manufactured home for taxes. And that's the one thing I did put in my letter to Linda Pearson, asking her who registered my property as a tax, because I never did. We never did. I wouldn't put my land into a structure of taxes, especially when I've gone after and printed it out and gone after them and said, no way. So, I mean, and that's a fact that's been proven out there. So I keep going after these men and women to prove the truth on these things. And that's what we need to do. And so, like I said, I will be putting out the thing for the flag out here pretty soon. I'll get that put out publicly. Eventually, what I'm going to be doing here in a little bit, we're going to get up. I got these videotapes of me at the House and Senate that I got to double check. I think we have them up on the website. And if not, I'm going to get them on the website because you can see where I'm going after the state attorney general and the Oregon State House and Senate. You can watch me go after them when they try to murder me on record. And, I'm saying this at the Oregon State House and Senate in public hearings. And you figure if I was lying, these men and women would have had me arrested for slander, from the state attorney general to the district attorney to the House of the Republican Party, Peter Courtney and everybody. And these are public hearings at the Oregon State House and Senate where I'm nailing them for attempt on my life. And no, everybody just doesn't want to talk about it. They want to run. They want to run out of the building. They couldn't get fast enough. They're scabbling me out of public hearings because they don't want the truth on public record.
Ed?
Go ahead. Somebody was thinking something?
Yeah, fancy name for dishwasher. Utensil sanitation specialist.
Oh, yeah. No, actually, they have that actually in New York City that way. And you got it. That is one of the names. And that is the one thing that people don't realize. They come up with these things and then all of a sudden everybody wanted all this pay increase. And then you wonder why, what is that called? McDonald's is doing everything computer automated, so they don't need employees anymore. This is the one point that gets to me is employees are being obsolete.
Hey, when I was a gas attendant, as they called it, I called myself a pump monkey. Basically, run out there, grab the pump, fill up the car, take the money, go to the cash register. Monkey see, monkey do. That's it.
Yep, I've been there, and I even was there, what they call the full-time gas station attendant, when they actually had where you checked the oil and you did all the deal. I mean, I was back in the 60s, 70s, and I worked at a gas station in San Francisco. I started working there when I was 7 years old.
And he was wearing bell bottoms at that time. He had a fro. He had a fro and bell bottoms.
I didn't have quite the fro. I had curly hair, but I do remember the bell bottoms.
See, and you're taking your advice from somebody who has that bad of fashion sense. Come on, guys.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Nah, he had to grow up sooner or later. Bell bottoms are one of the worst fashion sense out there.
I wouldn't quite say the worst.
I
weren't too bad.
I said one of the worst, not the worst, but
okay.
one of the
All right,
worst.
I got you. I was gonna say, but yeah, I got you. Well, this is the one thing that these people, we've got things that are moving. Things literally are moving. It's not a joke. They are getting it. We've been watching if you've been watching what's been going on the Capitol Hill. Capitol Hill is freaking out because they realize that people are comprehending more and more of what they have done to them, and they are getting scared because part of the reason is that one of the congressmen admitted slipped in a conversation talk show the other day. He was scared about what his constituents might do to him. I thought that was a bizarre statement. Out of the blue, he just said, I was afraid of what my constituents might do. He didn't say what, why, or how. So I just thought that was an interesting piece that, it almost came across like, okay, so you got guilt of something. These men and women are realizing that their clock is coming. So, and that's the one thing. When they're denying us services that our forefathers and our ancestry paid for. Our forefathers and our ancestries literally bled to death for. And then they're doing this and trying to destroy our lives around me. It's like the one cartoon I have, where the cop drags the guy into court and the court guy, the judge is going to the guy, well, me and your pastor are one and the same. And it's true, they are. That's the one thing that they're all one and the same. The marriage certificate, the bond insurance certificate, your birth certificate, registering with the state. People don't even know what the state means. That's the one thing that people don't comprehend, that the state doesn't have these authorities. But are people willing to stand up? It's like, it's like, the state of California is now telling the parents in California if your kid doesn't go to LGBT sex education class, you can go to jail. I mean, it shows you the mentality of these men and women. How come they're not sitting there yelling at the newspapers, yelling at the structure, what's going on, where they got these people telling them that if they don't abide by their administrative rules, they're going to put them in prison. That's what I get so stunned over, that people sit there and allow this stuff to destroy their lives, to control their lives, and they don't do anything about it to protect themselves. And we're living this craziness. Literally, it's sad. It really is sad. But like I said, I will be more than willing to send out the stuff that I'm putting out for anybody else. Maybe some of it will help, or maybe it won't. Who knows? That is the one thing we don't know. I want to get these videos up too, that with me at the Capitol, the Judicial Fitness Committee hearings, because I'm being very bluntful with these guys who, you know, have done this stuff to me. I mean, I can't speak for others, but I could directly speak what's happened to me. But I do have some of the education and knowledge that I could pass down that might help you out on your filing or putting your paperwork together so you're able to put it in record. Oh, and the other thing we do suggest to people, you know, you write your structure, you make a book out of it, get it binded. It's another thing that people don't tell you. Now that's evidence in the court. You know, you can present it as evidence in the court. You can make sure it's a fact. But remember, the main point was an affidavit. You have to be 100% honorable in those things. You cannot lie in those things, because if you lie in those things and they come back and bite you in the butt, it's twice as hard compared to the first time. So you always want to make sure that you're able to, you know, put it together and have some honor in those things. It does help. It really does help. So anybody can speak up. If anybody else got something else they would like to add up, you don't have to be bashful. This is, you know, to bring it up. Now I'm going to be bringing some stuff up for tomorrow night. Some stuff I had some thoughts that popped in my head that I'll eventually get written down here. And and that's the one thing, to put these things together now. Some of these states are claiming administrative rules are the laws, and that's why the point is to clarify to them administrative rules are rules that they go by. I'm not a member of their corporation. There is no law that says I have to be a member of their corporation. And I've asked them this, and a lot of us have asked these questions over the years to these people. You know, has anybody got something they want to throw in? Okay, not yet. Okay. So, but the other point is to make sure when you do this and you put your paperwork and file your paperwork, always put them on public bulletin boards. County commissioner meetings, you put them on the public bulletin boards. They're supposed to file those after 30 days. You put them on, like, let's say the City Hall Newport board, or the Toledo or Newport or one of these cities or counties, and you go to the county commissioner and you put it on their public bulletin board. Take a picture of it, make sure you got it recorded, put it in for evidence, and that way when they file it, you could always go back after 30 days in writing, ask for a copy of that they're supposed to certify and file at that point, and ask them for a copy of that, and they certify it and file it. Now you've got evidence for your case, whatever you're involved in. I mean, there are solutions to these issues of how to put these things so that way we have these things and to work for us. It's like learning to make the system work for you. It's how they change the words and phrases to put us at the mercy of their hand, the mercy of their control. And that's what they do to us. They put us at the mercy of their control. So at the end of this this evening, I will be putting some information up here on this YouTube site of what I filed, so that way people could go reference back to this YouTube channel, and I will have everything up there of what I've been bringing up, what I brought up, and what I sent out to the medical board and that stuff. You know, and so it is one of those things of how do we do these things? How do we accomplish it? How do we go from there? Say, I mean, and these are the things that we've got to do this. So when you've got these things, file these things. Make it apparent. Try to get other people to be involved with you. You know, that is the one thing that when you start bringing other people that are willing to stand up, starting to change our circumstances around us. And this is the structure that is there. You know, you can change the structure around you. That is the one thing that you can. And we can do it. And the only way it's going to happen is by we the people. We the people are going to make this happen. And it is slowly turning. We know it is. We see it. You know, I mean, people are reading what's going on in the media. People are reading what's going on by other organizations that are coming up panicking because they're worried about funding. You know, and that's the one thing that a lot of these public agencies, it's time that we ask them to defund them. We don't have to have these men and women paid out there. We don't have to have these men and women, you know, in the circumstances out there that are not protecting us, not protecting ourselves and our children or whatever. You know, and I can't speak to that because I don't have children, but, you know, I at least bring it up for those who do. So it is one of those things of how do you solve this? How do you do that? And the main thing is that when you get caught up in these issues, especially with the state and county, you know, it's like I'm bringing this stuff out. And it's like the other point, who owns the children when it comes down to it? Do you own your child? Does the state own your child? Does the corporation, or what corporation? So elected and public employees and administration of the attorneys, the lawyers, and the cops and judges and your doctors are claiming they own the children. They're claiming that you don't exist. You're basically the test tube for that life. Even though once the thing is a test tube child comes to life. Oh, that's right. There is no test tube children because test tubes are not life. Oh, that's right, because they have to be born or actually legally see the light. I think that's USC 1.8. So a child has to see the light before it's born. Or before the light sees a child when it's born, one or the other. Child has to see the light. And that's where it brings up that point. Because the child has to see a light before it's considered alive. And that's what your administrative rules state. So I don't have a problem with some of the administrative rules, the way they're written. They're written in a point that is to protect us. But we have to know how to comprehend the wordings and use it to look at how we need to put the structure in place to protect us or those around us. And it is interesting when you think about it, like who owns the children? How does this work? How does that work? Where's the implications of the House and Senate? These are the things that bring up these points of view that when we sit there and look at the what, why, and how, we have solutions to our problems. And also, too, we do have, to the best of my knowledge, on the new.org and trackers, banks cannot own land. Banks cannot hold the title on the land. So we have the state laws up there and the federal laws, administrative rules up there to the best of my knowledge. So these are points to look at, to read, bring to the attention, to bring to the circumstances, and don't forget 8 USC 1401, national citizens are enemies to the country at birth. And that is dealing with the 14th Amendment, large C and small c citizen of the state corporation or the organic state constitution. Like I said, once you start putting the pieces together and you start looking at this and you step out of the movie and you watch the production and you start going, holy mackerel, all of a sudden this starts coming into place. And it is amazing when you're able to read this stuff and you're able to put it in place and you're able to sit there and go, holy mackerel, this means a lot more than what I thought it meant. So, and it is coming out, and the truth is are working. The evidence is coming out dealing with the medical structure of society. And of course, I hate those British terminologies. But these are the one thing that in society, it is one of those things that are coming out that we have to deal with. It is our responsibility for ourselves, not our children. So once we realize that these are the things that are very important to we the people, our future is going to have a standing, and that's the children, non-corporation. That is not only the children, but that gets passed down with the education for the rest of the bloodline. Your bloodline, somebody else's bloodline, and that's one thing that we have to know, the separation of lawful and legal. So anyhow, with that one, I've brought up quite a few things this evening. Anybody wants a copy of what I've been sending out on this structure? I'm sending more out right now to people, getting this stuff out. Once we're able to get this stuff established on our rights that we're doing, we accomplish a lot of things, a lot more than what we're doing right now today. And that is the blessing that we have. That is with the circumstances of today, that is giving us our rights, not privileges. See, and this is the one thing that when we have rights, we're able to, have freedom. And we have to know our rights. We have to insert our rights. We assert our rights, there's no qualm in the future that people don't have an issue. I mean, there's so many simple solutions to what's going around. And then there's a lot of solutions that fighting with them, and we get tired of arguing with all these idiots. And it's just one of those things that we have to deal with to a degree, which we're living today. So with that, if nobody's got anything else they would like to add, I'll open up the floor again. Anybody would like to add something?
May I?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of them I didn't mention, the state corporation is called the Board of Medical Examiners.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what your problem is right now. But just so you know, it's a corporation, and it's owned by the state of Oregon. And, it's got, like all the corporations, a tax identification number and so on. So we're up against corporations everywhere, and that's the problem, is they're owned by the state. A tremendous amount of them. That's all.
That's true, and remember, they're a corpse, a dead body. That's what a corporation means.
Correct.
Problem is when you do business with them, they want all your information, and they want to make you the dead body too.
True.
Correction. They are not owned.
That is true, and that's the one thing we're trying to get away from.
Correction, real quick.
Go ahead.
They're not owned by the state. They are owned by the corporation that is fraudulently acting as the state.
Right.
Yeah, it's a corporation called State of Oregon.
Right, which the organic state that you live in would be like us in Oregon, be Oregon State. If it is state of
Oh, that's another corporation.
what
The only
Oregon
one
State?
Right. The original is the State of Oregon, upper lowercase.
Oh, okay, so that's another. So they got two different corporations that are working. Okay.
Yeah, they got all kinds of corporations. They incorporated many times with all these corporations, but they incorporated way back when with Oregon State, and then they went to State of Oregon. But the original is upper lowercase, the State of Oregon.
Okay.
And then they title everything basically State of Oregon, all capital letters.
Right.
In this state, or this state. And this state is defined as the land and the water and the airspace above the land and the water with respect to the State of Oregon. So it's you got to know all these terms to know which state are we talking about. This state, which you can find it in the ORSs in different places. It's in the Vultures book. You have one. Definitely this state. In this state is another terminology that's defined by them. By them meaning the attorneys, the art of words, the art of defining the words and declaring certain terms. I mean, everybody practically growing up calls it this state. They don't know what this state means. Same way when they don't know what the term in this state means. And it's trickery, it's deceit, it's dishonesty that the public fool system doesn't teach the children some of the terminology of these words.
Yep.
So we are very much deceived by some of the phrases and some of the words.
Extremely.
Biggest I can think of is right off the top of my head is still this state and what it means.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that people don't comprehend, how simple it really is the way it comes out. When you step back and you watch this stuff and you start going, I mean, that's the one beauty that we have with the knowledge that, we're able to pass out in this information. Well, it's like, people went through the deal of, we got to pay income tax, we got to pay property tax, we got to pay all this stuff. I mean, hasn't anybody actually seen a 10W4 form where it says exemption on that form? And then I've had people tell me, well, if you put the exemption on that form, you're going to go to jail and all this. And, when people tell you this, folks, they're so full of doggy poop, it's amazing. Because you can't go to jail from opting out of the system. I have never seen anybody go into jail from opting out. I see it from complying or not complying. And that's what we're dealing with right now today. I mean, I'm fighting with them, and I can prove the structures I say. And there's a lot of us out there who have been through this. We can prove what we say. And that is the one thing that when we're talking and they're getting this information out, providing this education or knowledge that we're sharing, because we've already been through the rough roads, the bumpy roads, the road of hard knocks. And those hurt sometimes. And so that's the one thing that people have got to realize, that sometimes when you're going through these terminology or these bumpy roads, everybody could get upset, wants to go do the depression deal or whatever, but, when you do that, you lose yourself. You lose your respect for yourself. And that's the one thing that we don't want people to go through that point. We want to make sure that people start seeing what they have in front of themselves. That way they have solutions to their own fights or arguments. Because I provide a lot of legal and lawful information up new.org and trackers on the Facebook sites we have out there. The United States for America Republic, Elected and Public Employees Oversight, the New Oregon Tracker site out there, Recall Cape Brown, and the Civil War 1866 Lawful Bloodline. And I've argued with people about the bloodline. And I produce the evidence that proves what I tell them about the bloodline is true, and then they want to argue about the bloodline. And then I find out a lot of these people who have been arguing with me about the bloodline are not even, Americans. They're from other countries. They're first or second generation. It's really disturbing when you have first and second generations that want to argue, because they don't want to take the possibility, if they didn't do their paperwork correctly, to come into our country, into our homes. Remember, these men and women came into... Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
May I?
Yeah.
Okay. That's why I've been saying more and more to get documents from them. I'm going to read a quick one for you that relates to, that's handy here. This is from the Department of Justice, and it's General Counsel Division, Government Services Section, Salem. And so I sent the question in, and this is the answer back, and it was an automatic win. Title, from Sarah Kastner, title Assistant Attorney General, Special Instruction. I was unable to find any statute that mandates acceptance of a uniform traffic citation. I hope this helps you. I do not prosecute these types of cases. And what I want to tell you here is, when you get stopped, if you have documents like this and you can hand it to the officer, it's like, shit, you better leave you alone. Because if they're not going to prosecute you, that means they're going to prosecute the cop, or you can prosecute the cop.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the highest law enforcement officer for the corporations in the whole state of Oregon? This is coming from the Attorney General.
Yep.
And it couldn't, this Assistant Attorney General made it absolutely clear. I was unable to find any statute that mandates acceptance of a uniform traffic citation. I hope this helps you. I do not prosecute these types of cases.
Do people comprehend what he just said?
That's all for now for me.
Gotcha. Now, see, that's the one valid point, is bringing this stuff out. So that's like when I'm bringing out this point, he brought a good valid point. That's why I'm going after this doctor. His assistant tells me, I didn't have the proper state paperwork and permission. Where does it say I need permission? It doesn't matter what their corporation says. I'll tell you that right now. Because I'm not a member of their corporation. And also, too, by federal law, they deny you medical services, they can go to jail. See, some of these administrative rules have been passed to protect we the people, but it's knowing how to use them. And that's what the gentleman was bringing up, that point, is how to use it. You got the evidence, you're bringing in the evidence, is knowing how to use it. And once we conquer all this stuff and we start knowing how to use it, we the people. And it is we the people. And as soon as more and more people comprehend we the people, you know, we could change a lot of things. A lot of things. We could change so many things by we the people. But standing up together, that is the main point that we have to do. And like I said, I sent out this doctor's deal I did. I always put these things instead of like some people say, well, hey, just put a page or two together. I don't know. I just go into books for some reason. Here's the law. Here's the structure. And then I ended up going for something that was supposed to be 2 pages. And I think this one turned out to be 11 or 9 or something. You know, I just wanted to bring up the law. Here's the 14th Amendment. Here's how the structure works. Here's the medical law. Here's the structure. Because then that way I'm quoting the structure to him. Oh, and he even quoted the Leaper Code to him in the medical structure, too. And don't forget, the Leaper Code was part of the National Bank Act of February 25, 1863. So, yeah, and that's back when they actually were having greenback, gold and silver, before they took it away from us. So it makes them in another classified structure. And not only that, we do have, and we've made sure that's gone public too, is the 400 pages congressional record of House December 13th, 1929, of the bankruptcy of the 1938 staged event. And this is the one thing that they did this because they were trying to get we the people to believe that we went bankrupt when the British government went bankrupt to we the people. That's your Christian churches. That's your Catholic churches, Roman Catholics and stuff. It's all in the congressional record of 400 pages when you read it. It's interesting when you actually read some of this stuff and you don't interpret it. That's the one thing I watch people that, and I've talked to people, and they'll try to interpret statute code or administrative rule like a lawyer would do. Or, you know, no offense to people that are religious, but people like to interpret the Bible. It's the same thing. Is they're not to interpret it. You have to sit there and analyze what the facts say. I mean, even the facts, you know, common use, the term of person does not include sovereign, statutes, employees, the phrase, or ordinary, the construction to exclude it. And that was U.S. versus General Motors, the corporation. I mean, there is a separation of the 14th Amendment that says nationals and citizens are considered enemies of this country, to we the people, compared to, what do they call it? Native born. And that's in the 14th Amendment. But, I mean, that takes a special attention to read things with detail. That's why I always do suggest people watch that movie Interstate 60. It'll explain your court system faster than anybody can logically or reasonably explain it to you. You know, so I mean, you know, that's the one thing, that the court system is based on rape, robbing, and stealing. And as soon as people comprehend that that's what the structure is, rape, robbing, and stealing, we can get further along. And I did send out some more information and other stuff that people are going through the same thing on property taxes and stuff. You know, so you guys have got that information that I've sent out to you too as well. Just like I said, you know, if we're all sit there and plugging in, but the one thing I would like to start putting together is with at least the couple dozen, or I'm putting together because there are a couple dozen people too. Once we're able to establish and get this thing with the flag, to get it certified from the senators or congressmen or their aides or whatever. Because remember, an aide is liable too. Oh, I know. Been there, done it. So, that's the one thing. When you put something in, if you are in a senator's office or a House member or anything like that, you put things in, it's an interesting tax for you too. And that's the one thing that people do not comprehend, that, when you're in those positions, you are liable. So, all public servants and public employees are liable. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So that is the one thing that, putting these things together, putting the structure together, working together, that is the one thing, that putting this structure out there for everybody coming up. And like I said, the most people that were able to get the circumstances, written up. And that's the one thing, like I said, bringing up the tension with manufactured homes. See, that's the one thing with manufactured homes. It's a property. It's an ownership. I know. I have one, and that's why I asked them, who registered my structure? Who allowed this to happen without my authority? And I haven't got a response back, and who knows what's going to happen. But I'm putting it out there. I'm not sitting there going after and whining about it. I want these people to prove it. They're telling me I'm supposed to go sell my assets and, my car and my fishing gear and my livelihood. And if I don't sell my stuff to pay their structure, I'm going to be assassinated? Isn't that what we fought World War I and World War II about? Wasn't that what we fought all these 1776, the War of 1812? We've already been there. We've already got this stuff on record, and we're still doing this to each other. See, that's what confuses me. I guess what really confuses me. I just stand stunned in the confusion of it. So, these are the points to bring out. These are the points to stand forth and bring these things out. So it is like, bringing the points out. I want to be able to make sure that when I email the information back and forth for the county, I'm emailing back and forth their emails to me too, so that way, it's still in public record. I haven't heard back from them, so I still would like to get a response. And like I said, Oregon State Statute 446576, you do not need to register manufactured homes. And, the court reporter, the tax collector, it says it right here in the administrative rules. It's called private property. But this is where the tax assessors, they'll register stuff in and say, you're liable for this now because it's registered. Well, who authorized the registration? Who did the registration? These are the points of bringing these questions out to the circumstances of these venues. Because once we've got them, then it's already done. There's no hearsay in it. It's already a done deal. So, but anyhow, it's getting a little late. I'm thinking I'm going to call it. If anybody else would like to add anything else in right now, and then tomorrow I'm thinking about, basically we're going to do an open forum a little bit. I got a couple things I want to hit tomorrow evening, but I'm thinking more a little open forum, and in that way, because I want to start getting into some people's cases, so this way we can start getting more and more what people are going through. I still got some letters I'm finishing up. I'll have those out here sometime here shortly. But like I said, I did have to jump on this one, seeing that they're playing medical with me again. And because I know that these medical board and I know the county and all these people keep in personal contact with each other. I know they're all an essential database. They tell you people, no, we can't do that. That's against public record law. No, if you ever read public record law, they're allowed to keep the records, but we're allowed to get them. And that means public record law. When you go in and you report something to the county or state, all that. When you report anything to the elected public employees agency, remember they do psychological analyzations on people when they do that. That's protocol because it's called. They do that because of medical structure. They really do. It is one of those things that is part of their administrative rules that is not publicly known. And if people actually knew half the stuff that these people actually do and get away with, it is amazing, But then again, I don't look at it totally amazing because they keep public record on us. But then they know who's lawful and legal, and we shouldn't be fighting these things when we know who's lawful and legal then. We know they have the record through all their system. We know they seal what they call sealed files. And so with the files that are sealed, what is that supposed to do to the average man or woman? And that's the one thing that a lot of files are sealed. A lot of paperwork are sealed because what they do is they seal it up to cover the corruption that was done in that case. They seal that even juvenile because it's not supposed to be juvenile courts and all this stuff. I mean, but we'll get it. Actually, I think tomorrow night be a little bit in the juvenile court department. But anyhow, if nobody's got nothing else to bring forward right now, I think we're just going to might as well call it an evening at this point and get ready for tomorrow. Nobody's got a response. Okay, so anyhow, then with that, I'm going to say, may the Great Spirit bless you. May Mother feed you. And may the Creator look over you.
Thank you, Ed, for the very interesting conversation tonight. You guys have just finished listening to Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. It's April 28th, 2018, 7:16 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you again, and remember, how you use your words is as important as when you use your words. Thank you very much. Have a good night.